HPW podcast is back. It's me. It's me. It's that MATT. And riding with me, as always, is my bro
What's going
Scott.
on, brother?
And our special guest hails from Mount Trashmore, Florida.
Trashmore.
He is none other than Duke, the dumpster, Droese.
Time to take the trash out. Woo!
What's happening, boys? I appreciate y'all having me on the show, man. I'm been really looking forward to this. So
thanks for coming on. Appreciate it. Appreciate you. Appreciate you taking time out of your life and to talk to us, guys.
My non-busy schedule.
Right? All right.
I understand you got another. Well, hopefully I can at least watch you later on when you're on with Benji and Dad 316.
Yeah, we're going to do a live. So I guess I'll. Hopefully, I don't get him kicked off.
Well, if I'm in there, they might red flag it and say,
kick us all out. So,
all right.
Yeah, I guess that's 7 p.m. Eastern time with Benji. So yeah.
No, don't hold anything back on this one. I have it set. The settings are good. We're gonna go.
Okay.
I guess we're gonna start we're gonna go back. I'm just gonna go in there. What age did you decide that you wanted to be a professional wrestler or get into the business?
I was a fan growing up. As a kid, I watched Championship Wrestling from Florida with Gordon Soley. I was really intrigued by it growing up, but I will tell you the absolute moment, and I've told this story many times, the absolute moment where I knew, and I actually said out loud I wanted to be a pro wrestler, was WrestleMania 1. My dad took me to watch it in an arena on closed circuit television. Back in those days, there was no pay-per-view. And we were watching the whole show, and it was just, I had grown up on Championship Wrestling from Florida, but WrestleMania 1 was just so different. And I was like, if this is what pro wrestling is going to be, I want to jump into that. And, I was still in high school, and I was on the high school wrestling team. And I kind of transitioned while I was in high school. Still, I learned about a school nearby in Opelika, Florida, near Miami. And I went and started training as a pro wrestler while I was still in high school.
Nice. Who was your trainer?
Bobby Wales, the Jamaican Jammer, Bobby Wales. He was most notably in Championship Wrestling from Florida. He wrestled as the tag team partner with the Haitian sensation Tyree Pride, and together they were the Caribbean Connection down there. He trained me. He trained a bunch of guys, but he also trained Norman Smiley while I was training. We called him Black Magic back then, but me and Norman Smiley trained at the same time at the same place when we were first breaking in. So
nice. How tough was the training? Was it intense? Was it all in ring, or was it gym? And
no, as far as the training that Bobby Wales did, it was all in ring, and there wasn't a bunch of Hindu squats and all that shit that people do. But I was in great shape because I came directly out of wrestling, high school wrestling. I was a heavyweight on the wrestling team, and I was in great shape from that. So it was real easy for me to kind of pick up the moves. It usually took me once or twice at most to pick up new moves and add them to my arsenal of moves. And basically within 6 months, I was in my first match. So
now in your early in the indies, what were the most memorable moments, matches, or stories from that time of your career in the early days?
It was an interesting thing. The indies, as they call them now, were a lot different back then. Independents were basically a guy that had a ring probably set up in his backyard to practice, and every once in a while he would get a show booked somewhere, at a park or at a ball field or something, and we would go once every month or once every 2 weeks or something and maybe have a show. I worked with a group of guys down there then. This guy, his wrestling name was Demon Hellstorm, and he owned the ring and he called it Sunshine Wrestling Federation. And so he was the champion, of course. He made himself the champion. And I was the best guy there working. So I was constantly in main event with him. And I was the big baby face. I was wrestling as the garbage man, Rocco Gibraltar. And I was the big baby face, and I was chasing constantly. He would never lose the championship to me, which I always thought was stupid. But he also didn't realize that, I got over even more just continuously chasing the freaking belt. And it was just an interesting angle to work with that guy. It lasted a couple of years, but when I broke in, my first match was with the AWA, back when Vern Gagne, I believe, sold it to the Savoldis, and they took over the name, and it became AWA ICW. And they were still using some of the AWA talent, like Larry Zbyszko and Nick Bockwinkel and Boris Zukov and Colonel De Beers and a bunch of other guys. And they came down to Florida, and they did a couple shows. My first match was in the Davie Rodeo Arena versus this guy named Johnny Blaze, who was one of Tyree's boys. Tyree was the one that got me booked on that, by the way. He wrestled on that show too, Tyree Pride. But so that was my first experience, working with the AWA. It was really it was intimidating, but it was also great. And I also did a TV match for them, which is lost somewhere in the archives of who knows what. But I wrestled as Mean Mike Casey, and I got screamed at by Mario Savoldi because I hit a guy with a nut shot on TV, and that pissed him off. So I got screamed at by him. I also got screamed at by Nick Bockwinkel because I was out in the back behind the dressing rooms at the Davie Rodeo Arena putting together my match with the Johnny Blaze guy, where some of the fans out behind the fence could plainly see us sitting there talking to each other. And freaking Nick Bockwinkel came out, and he goes, "Let me ask you a question. You guys wrestling each other?" And we were like, "Yes, sir." He goes, "Well, you need to get your asses in the locker room because there's fans over there watching you right now." I fucking went, "Sorry." I mean, I was like 18 years old, man. Nice. I was scared to death. So that's where those were the memorable moments. I also had some tours down in the Caribbean, with Tyree Pride. He booked some shows down in the Bahamas and stuff, and I wrestled with guys like Ox Baker and Bugsy McGraw and Tiger Conway Jr. And one of my very, very early matches, I wrestled against a guy named Chick Donovan, who I believe is still wrestling in his 70s, and he's in great shape, and he's a great wrestler. And you've heard the saying, somebody is so good they could wrestle with a damn, a mop and make it look, entertaining. Well, that's what he did with me because I was clueless and we were not in the same locker room together. It was back when they still separated babies and heels, and the ref ran back and forth with the finishes, and I didn't know what was going on, man. So Chick Donovan ran the whole match, but those were the early experiences I had with what you would now call independence down in Florida and stuff.
All right, awesome. So your name wasn't Duke the Dumpster Droese in the Indies to start off then?
No, I started as Mean Mike Casey. Then in the Caribbean, at one point, they changed my name. It was very brief, but they called me the Surfer Boy Harry Race, the nephew of Harley Race.
Surfer Boy.
Harley Race had no idea about it, I'm sure. But they tried that for a little while. And again, I was just this skinny 18, 19-year-old kid just out of high school. At one point, Ox Baker called me a beanpole on the TV taping. But those were the names, and then I got the name Rocco Gibraltar. You see, I was going to college too at Miami, University of Miami, and I was in a fraternity. One of the fraternity brothers gave me this great name, Rocco Gibraltar, and I was like, one day I'm gonna use that name. And so later on in my indie experience, I was trying to come up with a character that I knew Vince McMahon would like, for his company, because he had all those crazy characters and gimmicks, and it just came out, the Garbage Man, Rocco Gibraltar, and I said, this is perfect, blue collar, baby face, rough brawler, power wrestler, and this is the kind of thing that Vince would get behind because he would feel like the people would get behind it. And so I was wrestling as the garbage man, Rocco Gibraltar. And when I went up for the tryout eventually to work with the WWF, when they hired me, they changed it to Duke the Dumpster Droese. Droese is my real last name. They changed it to Duke the Dumpster Droese so they could own the licensing to it. But everything else, pretty much about the character and the gimmick, was the exact same thing I was doing in Florida. So the likeness belonged to me.
Awesome.
So we'll move right into the your WWF run. You were PWI top 50 or top 500 rather. And in the early days, I understand there was a 500 chant that happened.
Yeah, no, that's not true. That was
Not,
no, that was an article in Pro Wrestling Illustrated. Here's what happened. Just by coincidence, right before I went and got my break with the WWF, I was still wrestling down in Florida, and one night we were wrestling on a baseball field, the Perrine Corey League baseball field, and this guy Bobby Rodgers, he wrestled down there as the supposed nephew of Buddy Rodgers or something. He knew a lot of people, and apparently he knew some people that knew Bill Apter and stuff, and they were talking about looking for, the whole PWI 500. The joke was who's going to be number one, but more importantly, who's going to be number 500. It's a very memorable spot. They told me, and I didn't really care. They said, "Do you want to be the 500?" And I was like, "Sure." So that 93 Pro Wrestling Illustrated Top 500, I was number 500, the garbage man. That's the only name they put, right? But like I said, just out of coincidence, I was gearing up because I had just finished college. So I was getting ready to go. I was going to travel the country and try to get a job. And I had a promotional package, a tape I put together, which is out there on YouTube somewhere, and of Rocco Gibraltar. And I ended up crashing a TV executive convention in Miami Beach. And I walked up in a suit. And I walked up to Vince McMahon himself and told him I wanted to work for him. And I handed him the promotional package. So they brought me up for the tryout, and eventually they hired me, of course. Now, the reason I tell you that is to tell you this. They had already put into work the 500 thing with PWI, right? With Bill Apter. So all of a sudden, coincidentally, I'm getting hired by the WWF. So they wrote an article taking credit for getting me hired by the WWF, where they were saying that the crowd was chanting 500 and all that. The crowd didn't know anything about the top 500 when I was at my tryout, and WWF didn't know anything about the top 500 thing. It was just hilarious. But that most of that story was a work. But yeah, it was interesting, and it was a nice little kind of tidbit of history for me to be the number 500 guy on that list, and then immediately get hired by the WWF.
Gotcha.
Huh. That's kind of fun. Then of course you made your Monday Night Raw debut May 23rd, 94 against Barry Horowitz. What did it feel like finally actually getting the break, getting that big TV deal? Like now you're on national TV. It's not just regional.
It was exciting and intimidating at the same time. But I felt I was good enough to do it. I felt like I deserved to be there. Because if you're not ready, they would weed you out real quick, and you wouldn't make it. But one of the very first things I did was the live Raw King's Court with Jerry the King Lawler, and
yes,
we ended up doing the deal where he hit me with my own garbage can on live TV. And back in those days, that was a big no-no. It was too violent. It was considered too violent because they were still trying to be the original PG era. Coming out of the golden era and going into the new generation era, they were still trying to be PG. There was no attitude yet. And when he hit me with that can, They freaked out. Matter of fact, if you watch it on YouTube, as soon as he hits me, the camera shot drops way back in the arena to a camera way far away, where all you can see is the can coming up and down. You don't see him hit me anymore because it was so violent. And I'm sure Kevin Dunn in the truck freaked out and pulled the camera view away. But I just jumped right into it, man. It's like I said, live TV, either you're ready or you're not. And if you're not going to be there very long at all. I saw a lot of guys come in and leave almost just as quick because they couldn't handle live TV. You just got to do it.
And that was the next thing I was going to ask you about, is that whole Jerry Lawler deal, where I had in the I'm stumbling now. In my going through a lot, because there was some of the stuff I missed in the early part of your career. I missed that part, and they labeled that the first time anything extreme happened on a Monday Night Raw. Yeah, and
the first appearance of hardcore
history
on wrestling television.
Yes.
That's what they call it now.
That was cool.
That's okay. I'll take that. But yeah, it was interesting because it shouldn't have happened. But the way we did it, and Jerry was smart too. He asked the exact right agent in the back for permission. He asked Black Jack Lanza, "Hey, can we do this?" And Jack Lanza was like, "It's live television. Fuck it, just do it." And we were like, "Oh, we're gonna do it." But as soon as we did it and we came back, like the first person to run up to me was Shane McMahon. And he goes, "What happened?" I was like, "Well, we wanted to do this thing, so we asked and we did it." He's like, "Oh," they were all flustered by it. But the thing about the problem was, I think, is certain people there at the time saw that, and as like crazy as it was for the time, got a little bit kind of pissed off at the fact that we were trying to get over by doing something like that. And my angle pretty much got squashed with Jerry the King Lawler. What happened next is they did this stupid thing on Superstars where he had to apologize and made a big joke out of it. Like this was it could have been a major angle in a feud, and it should have gone to pay-per-view, but it never did. What ended up happening is it got watered down and it got squashed, and then it became an afterthought, I think, and we ended up having a Raw match where I won by count out because Doink and Dink got involved. Yeah. But it was crap. I mean, we should have had a good pay-per-view match out of that, but it seemed to me, and this was my first experience with what I figured was the politics of pro wrestling, it seemed to me that somebody, as soon as we did that thing with him hitting me with the garbage can, it felt like somebody hit the brakes, and it wasn't us. Somebody hit the brakes, and all of a sudden there wasn't as much, energy put behind it, and that's kind of how it happened. But yeah, I mean, I loved working with Jerry the King Lawler. He was so easy. He took all the bumps, man. Working with Jerry Lawler, it's like, normal matches. I always tell people, professional wrestling is like being in pretty much like a moderate car accident every night of the week. And there's truth to that, a lot of truth. And with Jerry, I didn't have to, I still felt fresh after the match. I wasn't hurting at all. Most nights you're hurting, you're feeling it. And when I wrestled Lawler, he did all the flying around. He took all the bumps. He was the great storyteller, and I had a blast working with him. But yeah, it just kind of got squashed and fell by the wayside.
I think that with Vince in control, I feel like he bumped the brakes a lot of times on a lot of stuff. Now that
more so the older he got, he really did.
Yeah, and now that Triple H he's not pumping the brakes as much. And so I just noticed. So when you said that, I was like, that must have been a Vince thing, or a Vince era thing, or what I'm saying, or Vince running the company thing.
Yeah, I would say so. In that era, it was hard to get anything extreme past him, and there wasn't writers. It was Vince. It was Pat Patterson. It was Bruce Pritchard. And this was even before JR came in and Jim Cornette was just about to come in. So it was really just the brain trust of like three people. I mean, Vince Russo was just the editor of the magazine at the time. He wasn't a writer or anything. None of that stuff was happening yet. So it was pretty much Vince. And I think Vince went kicking and screaming into the Attitude Era until it started making money. Then he realized, we're on to something. But eventually, when they went public and he had to get all corporate again, they had to go back to PG, he felt. But overall, I think his main style was PG, family entertainment, not too violent, not a lot of blood or any of that stuff, which is, again, I feel why they put the axe to that Jerry the King Lawler feud.
Well, right after that was got you got featured in. Oh, yeah, you were on two of my favorite pay-per-views. I love the Royal Rumble and I love King of the Ring. I wish they would bring the King of the Ring back. What's your experience like? What do you have any cool stories about those two from '95 specifically?
Well, I'll tell you about the Royal Rumbles in general. Is like the Royal Rumble was pretty much the only pay-per-view I was ever on for a long time because they were never putting me on any singles matches on any other pay-per-views. So I was always in that Royal Rumble. I was one of those 30 guys or whatever it was. But other than that, I wasn't getting pay-per-view, which was one of the singles pay-per-view matches, which was very frustrating. I wasn't actually in King of the Ring pay-per-view. I was in a King of the Ring qualifying match that was on regular TV before.
Okay.
Yeah, before we ever got to the pay-per-view. On TV, on the weeks building up, they would have the qualifying matches, and I lost to the Godfather. Great guy, by the way, and great worker too, and I'm still friends with him to this day. He was my qualifying match, and that was not on the actual pay-per-view. So I was pretty much just a Royal Rumble guy for a long time until later on, when my first contract was up and I was pissed off and I was ready to quit. And they got me to re-sign a 1-year rollover, and they gave me the deal with Hunter Hearst Helmsley eventually, and that ended up in a singles pay-per-view match on In Your House, but it was a singles pay-per-view match. But yeah, that's before that, man, I was Mr. Royal Rumble. I was always in the Royal Rumble. That was my go-to and only pay-per-view for the longest time. So
you just mentioned the Triple H Hunter that feud. What was and how is he to work with? Is he one of those?
Triple H is great to work with, man. Triple H, of course, he was part of the clique, so I was kind of aggravated at times with that whole situation because I knew he was protected. He wasn't never really going to lose to me on a big stage, on a pay-per-view or nothing. But I mean, when they set up that angle with him cutting my hair off, that was because I was pitching Vince in the office to turn me heel. I wanted to change my whole persona as far as no one, I want to have short hair or a shaved head even. And I wanted to turn heel. And we made that part of the angle with Triple H where he cut my hair off because I pissed him off because we had that free-for-all match that determined who was number one going into the Royal Rumble and who was number 30. And I beat him by disqualification, once again, not pinning him. That was another trend with Duke the Dumpster. He never pinned anybody. He always beat people by count out or disqualification. Any of the big stars, at least. So then we had that. We did the free-for-all match, and then the next week on TV, building up to the Royal Rumble, he jumped me out in the ring after I wrestled an enhancement guy, and he gave me the pedigree face down right into my own trash can lid, and then he cut my hair off. And that was the fire behind the angle. It was a really good angle. I thought it had a lot of heat behind it. And as we built up to the match and made it to In Your House, we had the match, and I wasn't really thrilled with the finish. He hit me in the face with my own garbage can lid. See, that was another trend. I always got hit with my own shit. That was friggin' stupid. But in this case, what was stupid to me was to start this angle, we had the free for all match, right? That I won by disqualification because he hit me with brass knuckles. And Gorilla Monsoon, the acting commissioner, came to the ring and overturned his victory because he hit me with brass knuckles, right? Well, fast forward to the In Your House pay-per-view. He hits me with my own trash can lid and pins me. And there was no Gorilla Monsoon, or there was no, there was no thing made of that for a disqualification or anything. So it just didn't make sense to me. And I kind of complained about it. But like I said, I had already re-signed that 1-year rollover so that they owned me again. And that's when Vince basically told me, just show up like you always do with a smile on your face and do your job.
So you mentioned it. You mentioned the click. I read some stuff. Maybe I'm wrong. Your relationship with Shawn Michaels, that didn't seem to be a great relationship. Can you elaborate on that?
Well, I mean, look, I got along with everybody. I got along with Shawn. 99% of the time. But he was very arrogant. He was an asshole. He was an asshole to people on purpose. And I did not like that about him. But to my face, he was pretty much nice most of the time. But I'm sure there was shit behind my back, he would say. But I really didn't care, man. Especially later on, in my short career there, I
Hello.
Or did we?
I don't know where you went. Did he
He
freeze
must
up?
have. He must have froze up.
I'm still live. Duke, you there? So far, it's interesting stuff, guys. So far, from Duke to Dumpster
Yeah.
Droese. What happened?
I'm guessing he's probably gonna come back.
All right, so go ahead, Matt. Continue.
No, I think this is a great story. I'm gonna hopefully hopefully he'll come back on and we'll since we asked him about Shawn, I definitely wanna ask him about his interactions with Scott Hall.
Yeah.
So
thank Nightmare Wrestling. Thank you guys for coming in. Hambone, thank you for coming in. As soon as he pops back on, we'll start it over again. Here we go. So yeah.
I'm gonna put Boomer outside because I'll be right back.
All right.
He's back.
He's back. He's back. So no, we were just talking about Shawn Michaels and stuff like that. And back to where Triple H was, you had that thing with Triple H. How much was Bret the Hitman Hart in your ear, in your helping you through that? Did he tell you? I read that he told you to refuse the job with Triple H, etc. What can you tell us about your relationship with Bret the Hitman Hart and how he helped you or did not help you in that situation or time of your career?
Around that time, like before my contract rolled over for another year, during that time I was riding a lot with Bret Hart. Actually, I had walked up to him one night at the bar and just told him how frustrated I was with the whole situation in the company and how they were using me. And he invited me to come ride with him. Now, that was a pretty huge deal because nobody really rode with Bret Hart back in those days, except maybe like, Owen or the British Bulldog sometimes. But for the most part, they called him the lone wolf for a reason. He was on his own, but I started riding with him and I thought, oh boy, I'm going to get some like freaking great advice. And, but yeah, when my original 2-year contract was up, there, out of the blue one night at TV, there came a match and they said, Duke, get your stuff. We're going to have you wrestle a match with a new guy. Now, it wasn't Triple H. It was the ringmaster,
Ooh,
Stone Cold Steve Austin.
Nice.
And they
that's
said,
cool.
you're going to put this guy over. Can give you about 5 or 6 minutes, whatever. So I was doing a job for him, whatever. I didn't have a problem doing a job for Steve Austin, obviously. And he wasn't Stone Cold then. He was just a new guy breaking into the company. But um, I was frustrated in that situation where I was at the end of that first 2-year contract. And at that point, I was just ready to go home. I was just frustrated. And Brett said, I'd refuse to do it. I refuse to do the job. And I went and talked to Bruce, and I basically said, I don't understand what I'm doing wrong, but obviously you guys, you know, aren't going to use me any better than this. So if that's the case, I'll just go home. And he goes, no, no, hold on. And he went and talked to Vince or whatever. And he goes, don't worry about the match tonight or whatever. So when I went back in the locker room, I remember Fatu Rikishi. He was Fat Junior. He was Fatu back then. He said, "You better go tell Steve why you're not wrestling with him." So I went up to Steve, and he goes, "Hey man, I heard we're working together." I said, "No, we're actually not." And I told him, I said, "Listen, it has nothing to do with you, man. They've been killing me here for the last year and a half, and I finally decided I had to take a stand." And because I'm just tired of it. I mean, I'm not only am I not on TV, when I am on TV, I'm losing, and I'm not on the road, which is where you made your money back in those days, was on live shows. They weren't even putting me on tours very much. I was like, this is just killing me. So that's the reason I did it. And he was like, hell, man, I understand, because he, coming from the situation he did at WCW, he completely understood getting done wrong. So from that point, he and I became really good friends, and we actually started riding together for a while after that. But I always love to tell the story how I refused to do a job for Stone Cold Steve Austin. And we
Yeah.
still laugh
That's
about it. I
awesome.
did his podcast, I think it was like 2 years ago. I was on there. Man, we sat there laughing and talking shit for 3 hours. And I brought that up, and he goes, oh, hell, I forgot about that. I was like, I refuse to do a job for Stone Cold, probably the biggest, most iconic wrestler in the wrestling business, in the history of the business ever. And I said, no, I'm not going to work with him.
On the Hart family, I had one other thing. I know Matt has a bunch of stuff. So
Sure.
tell us about the Owen Hart and the Domino's Pizza.
Oh, that was like when I first started. When I first came in and started working for the WWF, I don't remember where we were. It was some relatively big city somewhere, I think, like somewhere in Indianapolis or something. But a lot of us were in the same hotel this night. And I think it was the end of a loop. We had just done a bunch of cities. We were all getting ready to get on early morning planes and go home for a couple days. And um, I think I laid down at midnight, and I think I had to be on a plane at 6 a.m. And my phone rings at like 2 a.m. or something. And I pick up the phone. I was like, hello. And he goes, hello, sir. My name is so and so from Domino's Pizza, and I am calling to offer you our midnight special. We have great specials on pizza and other cheesy breads and blah, blah, blah. He was just going on the thing. I'm going, God, what is it? I go, I don't want pizza. Leave me alone. So I hung up the phone. He calls back. Sir, there's no reason for you to be rude to me. I'm just trying to do a job here so I can feed my family. So I'm trying to sell you some Domino's pizza. And I've got some really great deals. You should really consider buying some pizza tonight. And I was like, leave me alone. And I hung the phone up. And then, like, forgot all about it, right? And then we all went home, and then we came back out on the road at some point, and we were all like, in a locker room at some show somewhere, and Owen Hart breaks out this old school telephone voicemail recorder that you used to put the cassette tapes in to, it was your answering machine. Is
Yeah.
basically, it was literally an answering machine that sat next to the phone. Well, he brought it on the road and he hooked it up to his freaking hotel phone. And when he pulled these freaking ribs, he would tape record it. So he had me on tape recording, screaming and yelling at him about freaking Domino's Pizza, and he played it for the whole locker room. And they all just sat back and laughed, and they go, "All right, so now you know what Owen Hart will do." That was Owen. He was a great guy. Funny ribs, harmless, funny ribber, and he's definitely greatly missed. He was such a great guy. I mean, I always tell people, in the wrestling business back in those days, I could count the number of real, genuine, good human beings on one hand. And that's the truth. And he was one of them. He was the guy, he didn't do drugs. He didn't cheat on his wife. His main purpose was making money to provide for his family. And that's the kind of guy he was. And that was, dare I say, that was kind of a rarity, man. A lot of guys would get on the road and they'd turn into pigs and they would cheat on their wives and they would do drugs and all these crazy things. And he wasn't one of those guys. He was one of the good ones.
Nice. Thanks for that story.
Now, who we hear all about Owen being the River, and who was the biggest River in that locker room, or was it Owen?
Owen was he was always looking for ribs to pull, and like I said, that were harmless. But Davy Boy, the British Bulldog, Davy Boy Smith, he was brutal. He was a ribber, and a lot of his ribs were mean. I remember one particular, and I don't necessarily have 100% proof, but we knew it was him that did it. But this was the situation. We were at a hotel, and a few guys were down at the bar. And I remember actually the bar was closing, so there was really nobody there but just a few of the wrestlers having drinks. And the thing that I noticed that was odd to me was Mike Chioda, the referee, was there. Most of the referees know better, and definitely the office people know better than to come hang out and party with the wrestlers. Because if you do, you can get yourself into some trouble. Because wrestlers are a unique breed of individuals. And Mike Chioda was down there, and he was really messed up. And I just remember looking at him go, "Oh, boy, this is not going to end good." And I just kind of looked around the room, and, it looked like there were some pretty harmless people with him. I don't know who was sitting drinking with him, but a couple wrestlers. But what ended up happening, this was in Europe. That's where it was, because we got on a plane the next day and early morning, and I remember getting on the plane and sitting up front, like I think in first class. I saw King Kong Bundy sitting up there, and I was like, "Why is Bundy sitting up here?" And I looked next to him, and there was this little person, like with a hat on, like kneeled over. It was Mike Chioda, and they had shaved his hair off his head and his eyebrows.
No way.
And I looked at him and I went, "Oh my God." And Bundy goes, "Get out of here." He was like his bodyguard or some shit. And he goes, "Leave him alone. Get out of here." So I just walked away. I was like, damn, somebody got him. And, as we go to the next show, we're all in the locker room. Everybody's talking. And sure enough, they were saying it was British Bulldog that did it. It was Davey.
Nice.
My doxy is going nuts over here.
So was the morale in the locker room a family lifestyle, or was it family, or was it not so much?
Look, we got along. Everybody got along for the most part, and we tried to always be funny and make each other laugh and keep each other in high spirits in the locker room, because in those days, not many people were making a lot of money. There was the haves and the have-nots. I think a handful of guys at the top were making most of the money. And by main event standards, it wasn't a lot of money for them either, but we were really not making money. I mean, so there was a lot of frustration. and a lot of guys were coming and going from the company, like getting so pissed off. I mean, I remember like Danny, big Danny Spivey telling the story when he came back as Waylon Mercy. He came in, and Vince starts everybody on the same deal. Back in those days, it was no guarantee. It was just a chance to work there. It's like 10 matches for $150 a match was the only guarantee in the contract. You knew you were going to get more than that. But anyway, there was a lot of nights on some of these B-town shows where we were working to a half or a quarter of an arena, and you could take a $200 draw each night in cash to pay for road expenses. And it got to the point where some of these shows were so bad, there was no people there, that you knew if you didn't take your $200 cash, you weren't going to make $200 cash. You might get a check for $150 for that show, for the entire show. So I got real good at looking out and seeing the crowd and determining if I should take my draw or not. Most of the time I took my draw, because otherwise I wasn't going, a lot of shows I wasn't even making $200 in the World Wrestling Federation. So morale was pretty low.
Wow.
It was right on the heels of the steroid scandal. So everybody was worn out, exhausted, tired. We were working our asses off and not making a lot of money, and it was difficult and it was tough. So again, we tried to keep each other's spirits up and have fun as much as we could. Some of us a little bit too much fun, but it was tough during those years, man. It was tough.
So I have to ask, you won a Slammy. I thought that was did they actually give you something to commemorate that, or is that something that they just kind of, it was a prop, I guess?
Let me tell you what happened. I remember, here's how I remember it. First of all, that's a myth. I did not win a Slammy, but I'm going to tell you the circumstances, why people think I did. I remember we were working up to the 1996 Slammies, and one of the TV guys in the back, one of the producers, I was just a young redhead kid. I can't remember his name, but he actually, what he told me was, "Hey, you're going to be presenting a Slammy." I was like, "Holy shit, that's cool!" And I called the office and I said, "I hear I'm going to be presenting a Slammy. What do you guys want me to do?" And Ann Russo was like, "Who told you that?" I was like, I heard from one of the producers that we're going to film something and do." She was like, "No, that's not exactly it." Well, what it turned out to be was, there's a tape out there on YouTube, I think. I may not be on YouTube now, but of me doing the impersonations of all the other wrestlers. I did a Vince McMahon. I did some of this. Some of them were horrible. Some of them were okay. British Bulldog or whatever. I danced around like Shawn Michaels, but I did this whole like promo of just me being the other wrestlers. And they fit. I filmed it with this producer, and what they did is they put it on before the presentation of one of the Slammies. They put it on during the Slammy show and showed that for some reason. And now where I was sitting, actually, I was sitting at the table with Bret Hart during the Slammies in that whatever arena we were in. I didn't even get to see it really because there wasn't very many monitors around, but I kind of saw it. But that's all I ever did. I never won a Slammy. Somebody somewhere made up that me and Henry Godwin were tied for some Slammy, and I never got a Slammy award. And
maybe we need to investigate that. Maybe
I don't know where it came from. I mean, there's a lot of misinformation that turns into fact if there's nobody to dispute it over the course of so many years. It's not disputed, then it becomes fact, and it's the farthest thing from the truth. But that's one of those situations that people are bringing up. They talk about the Slammy, and I go, I never won a Slammy.
So that's a myth that got debunked, huh?
Yes, debunked right here on this show.
Yes, correct. What was it like coming back to WrestleMania 17 for the Gimmick Battle Royal?
All right. I will be very real and honest, as I always am in these interviews.
Good.
part of the reason I left the WWF, I developed a nasty drug habit. My body was beaten and broken, and I started taking painkillers. Well, by the time I ended up going home, and I had been home for a few years. When I went home, I spiraled out of control and really got bad on drugs. So, fast forward to 2000, 2001. By that point, I was actually going to a methadone clinic in Miami, Florida to get methadone because I had gotten so addicted to painkillers and I just ran out of money and ran out of everything. And so I had to go to this place and get methadone every single morning. And anyway, I was also working locally down there for this promotion that I had worked for before the WWF, the Sunshine Wrestling Federation, which by that point had turned into Florida Championship Wrestling. That before it became a developmental league for the WWF. This was before that. They had bought the name, and I was working for them, and I was barely keeping it together on drugs and stuff. And somebody told me about the gimmick battle royal at WrestleMania. They said, you need to call and ask them about that because they got a lot of funny gimmicks and yours would be perfect. And I called Bruce Pritchard, and he was like, where you been, man? We were looking for you. Yeah, sure, you were looking for me. But I got on the gimmick battle royal. And now while I was getting ready to go up there, how was I going to, you see, if I didn't have methadone or some kind of painkillers or something, I was so addicted that I would have gotten very sick. It's called withdrawals. It's called dope sick. You get so sick, it's like 1,000 times worse than the worst flu you could experience. Anyway, the people at the methadone clinic gave me 3 days worth for the weekend, WrestleMania weekend, so I could go to Houston, Texas, and take part in this and make it back home and be okay. And that's basically what I did. I was on freaking methadone for the damn gimmick battle royal, so I didn't even get to experience it fully like I should have. And I was definitely like in no condition to wrestle, but thankfully all I had to do was walk around with a bunch of other old guys and punch and kick each other. And everybody was just goofing off in there and having a good time and laughing. And it was a WrestleMania moment because, it was amazing to walk out there in front of 65,000 people in the Astrodome. That was insane, but it was bittersweet for me because I was so freaking far gone. I mean, now in the years since, I've had my trials and tribulations and my ups and downs, but now I'm free and clear of all of that, and I'm not on drugs anymore. Thankfully today, I knock on wood. But and now I have the opportunity to work with other people that are struggling with drug addiction problems and stuff like that. That's my shoot job. I work for a drug court program now here where I live in Tennessee. So it kind of came full circle, but it was rough going for a while. That just so happens to be when that WrestleMania gimmick battle royal came up. I was elbow deep in it, boy. But I was glad to be there.
Good. This question actually comes from Wheels. You know him from TikTok. He wanted to know, did you have any heat with any of the guys in the back? Like, did you personally say, all right, I don't want to deal with this guy, or the other way around? Was there any heat back there with you?
I mean, I think I had a little bit of heat with some of the clique guys because I would tell them to their face how I felt about them. I was like, you're a piece of shit. I would tell Scott Hall he was a jackass all the time. And some of them did not like to hear that. But I think they also respected the fact that I was not fake in their face. I wasn't being fake to be their friend to try and get a better spot or nothing. I didn't give a shit, man. If you were a jackass, I told you were a jackass. But I don't think it was major heat with those guys. However, I was never on the slot. I was never on the card to work with any of those top guys either. That was the problem. The furthest I got was Hunter, and that was just when he was coming in. So I never got to work any main event stuff with like a Shawn Michaels or Kevin Nash or any of that stuff. But real heat, I kind of had some heat with fucking King Kong Bundy, man. Me and Bundy didn't like each other. I mean, we got along good enough, but he was a fucking jackass. Excuse my French. He was an asshole. And I don't like to speak ill of the dead, but just because he's dead doesn't mean he wasn't an asshole. And he was. And he didn't like me either. He talked a lot of shit about me. And he couldn't control his body very well in the ring. He would drop things on you that he would hit you. Like there's a match on YouTube with me and King Kong Bundy, and I made a post on TikTok about it where he dropped a freaking knee on my face, man. It about broke my nose. And I was like, you see me sit back and I put my hands over my face like this, and I go, what the fuck are you doing? Right in the middle of a TV match, I started yelling at him and cussing at him because he had no control over it. And he didn't care. He didn't care. He's like, whatever. I was like, that's not cool. So, but yeah, Bundy and me he thought I was like some rich kid. My dad was an attorney, my mom was a microbiologist, but they had 4 kids and they weren't making a ton of money. We weren't rich. We were just middle class people, and he just assumed I was some rich kid that just walked into the WWF, and didn't freaking pay my dues. And that's the kind of shit he used to talk about me, when interesting story. One day we were at a TV taping, and we're all in this arena. It was really early. There was no fans or anything there. And, they were just putting the ring up and stuff. And some of the boys were sitting over here. Some guys were in the back locker room, whatever. And I noticed that Bundy was sitting on the stands with a few younger wrestlers. Some of the job guys and maybe a couple other guys. I don't know who they were, but they were all just sitting there talking. And I walked around behind the stands and came up behind him underneath and was listening. And Bundy was saying he was just in that moment taking the opportunity to say, that fucking Duke the Dumpster, he don't even deserve to be here. His rich mommy and daddy are paying for his road expenses and stuff, which was not true. It was ridiculous. But he was saying all that stuff about me, and I was like, golly, and I'm not even sitting in front of him, so he's just really, this is truthfully how he feels about me. So then one day, a couple days later, I'm in the locker room. I go, I heard that shit you said about me. He goes, what? I go, I heard you say, oh, mommy and daddy are paying my way on the road. He looked shocked. Like, how did you know this? And he started, you could tell he was making the mental notes, trying to figure out who the guys were sitting around him and who told on him, who stooged him off. When in fact, I was just hiding behind him under the stands, listening to what he was saying. And he was like, no, I didn't say that. I said, yeah, you did. You're a big piece of shit. So me and Bundy never got along. And then years later, like right before he passed away, actually, we were both at Icons in Philadelphia, the convention Icons, in the ECW arena, signing autographs or whatever. And he was across the other side of the room, whatever. And I remember I was talking to some fan and about something, signing autographs. And I was talking to this fan about wrestling in the old days, and the fan made a comment right as Bundy was walking by. The fan said something about old school wrestling. And Bundy stopped and he turned and he looked right at me, and I just smiled. And all he said was, and these are the last words King Kong Bundy said to me. He said, Jesus Christ. And he turned and he just kept walking.
We had a guy.
He freaking hated me, and I didn't like him either.
There was a question on about King Kong Bundy, about the action zone against King Kong Bundy.
My nose is still.
So that was in the action zone when he dropped a knee on you?
That was the action zone when he dropped that freaking knee on my face, man. I was like,
nice.
Hey, Bundy, you ain't a freaking luchador, man. You ain't supposed to be dropping knees. You could slam me, you could backdrop, you could throw me all over the place, but don't drop a freaking knee on my face, dude. Right. You can drop a knee on my shoulder or something where it won't hurt me.
Right.
Did you have any interactions with Undertaker and that crew, the BSK? Did you have any?
Yeah, I always say that it's at one point, if you were not a member of the clique, you were probably an honorary member of BSK. That's the group I hung out with a lot more. I mean, I tried to hang out with everybody, but more so we would hang out and drink and party with those guys. And Undertaker was an interesting character. He pretty much stayed in character almost all the time. That's how he did his gimmick. He lived it. And one of my main goals as a WWF superstar when I worked there in those years was, by God, I was going to find a way to make the Undertaker fucking laugh. And he was a tough nut to crack. It was hard to make the Undertaker laugh because I was always cutting up and doing jokes and doing those stupid impressions in the locker room and on the bus, constantly goofing off trying to make people laugh. And most people would laugh at most of my shit, but Undertaker, he would just sit there. Every once in a while he'd roll his eyes. And then, but every once in a great while, on a very rare occasion, the Undertaker would, I would say something I thought was funny, and he would go, I was like, yes, victory is mine.
Score.
That's awesome.
Score.
Did you ever have a chance, or did you ever want the chance to be a part of a tag team, or is it always singles?
There were a few times where they put me and Bob Holly together and wrestled as a tag team on TV. We wrestled Owen and Davey, which was always an interesting match, to say the least. They were constantly goofing off, even on TV. They were doing little things to try and make you laugh and stuff like that. If you really watch Owen closely on TV matches, he's more than likely he's doing something to try and make somebody laugh. And Davey was just a goof too. He was the same way. But yeah, me and Bob Holly, we tagged together a little bit, not on the road or anything, but on the road every once in a while they'd put me in some worthless tag team. One time they put me in a 6-man tag. It was me and the Bushwhackers versus Isaac Yankem, DDS, the 1-2-3 Kid, and Leif Cassidy of the New Rockers.
Okay.
That was a 6-man tag. It was on the road though. It wasn't on TV.
Actually, I have a special guest coming in to I don't
Steve
know.
Austin?
Steve
Hulk
Austin.
Hogan?
Steve Austin. I got a special guest who wants to ask a couple questions.
Sure.
Come on in.
Oh, you didn't know?
Your ass better call somebody.
Your ass better call somebody. You're famous, bro.
A question, real quick.
All right, what's your question?
What was your favorite? Like, how did it go with Vince?
He wants to know how it was working for Vince.
Working for Vince was an interesting experience. I told the story earlier, basically, about how I walked up to Vince at a convention to get my job. So I had that one-on-one, what I felt. I had a one-on-one relationship where I could talk to Vince. A lot of people were scared to talk to Vince back in those days. But I always tried to talk to him. But also, you have to keep in mind, Vince McMahon was and is a wrestling promoter. And eventually a promoter is going to maybe lie to you, or they're going to give you a promise that they go back on because for some reason they changed the plans. And Vince did that a lot. Not just with me, he did it with a lot of people. And that was part of the business. And if your feelings got hurt, then you probably weren't going to last long. You know, if your feelings got hurt, you just had to go on to the next thing. But it was interesting dealing with Vince. He was a very shrewd businessman. You know, it was all about what's best for business. And, but he was always real nice to me until the end. At the end, I started to get a little bit irrational and I was angry all the time. And I think he kind of got sick of our little meetings. We used to have like little meetings at TV where we would get together like in the hallway and talk, and he would always bring Jerry Briscoe with him to stand next to him. Like, I don't know, if he's worried that I was going to hit him or something or attack him, or maybe just as a witness, I don't know, but he had Jerry Briscoe standing next to him. But, you know, overall, man, you had to expect that's the way promoters are, and they still are in this business. I mean, they'll lie to you. You just got to be able to handle it and still get yourself over and become popular with the fans. And I wasn't really good at that then, so I took it personally when he went back on a promise. But yeah, he was a promoter, man. He was, sometimes those promoters are the scum of the earth, so you got to be ready for it in the business.
Do you still watch? Do you watch the current product, or do you kind of step away from the business right now?
Yeah, I don't watch a lot of current wrestling at all. Actually, I when I hear about something that is was people consider a good match or something, I'll try to catch a replay of it like on YouTube or something. But overall, I don't watch things live. I don't even really have TV. I don't watch much TV at all. I'm kind of addicted to TikTok these days. But
Yeah.
but I'll tell you, when I quit watching wrestling, when I decided to quit watching the WWF, was when they did that angle where Triple H climbed into a casket like he was getting on top of a dead body, and I was just like, that is in such poor taste. And
Yeah.
so yeah, I quit watching for a long time after that. But interestingly, I will say this, and I'm sure that probably wasn't his idea, but now that he's taking over and I'm seeing some of the moves that he's making, I'm kind of intrigued. I'm kind of interested, and I think I'm going to start watching again. I just got to figure out that whole, you know, uh, WWF network and Peacock thing. I don't know. I don't even know where it is these days to find it, but I'll look for it and
Yeah, it's
start
on
watching it some.
Peacock.
Peacock. Gotcha.
As, as DX would say, it's on the cock.
It's on the cock. Is that what they call it? That's
That's,
wrong. That's
that's
so
what
wrong.
DX would call it, right?
I guess. Yeah. Yeah.
Back when they were over.
Uh,
I don't
um,
know what that means.
Overrated.
Oh my goodness. No, they were over.
I have another question.
Go for it, Haas.
What was your favorite opponent in the business?
I get that question often, and it's often difficult to answer. And a lot of times I give different answers to different people because of just fa- famous for different reasons, or favorite, I should say, for different reasons. I will say I loved when I first came in, I was wrestling with this guy named Quang. And later he became Savio Vega, and he was a trip. I had so much
okay.
fun wrestling him. I had a blast wrestling Pierre, which is now PCO, but Jean Pierre Lafitte, or Pierre, the Quebecer Pierre, now he's PCO. I had a blast wrestling him. I enjoyed the few times I got to wrestle the Henry Godwin, the hog farmer. I never got to wrestle Steve Austin very much. We rode together a lot, but we didn't wrestle against each other very much. Um, but I would have loved to. But those are the main guys, that I got to work with a lot. And I'll say this, man, Triple H was fun to work with. When I had the angle with him, man, we went around the world wrestling each other, getting ready for that pay-per-view. We did a lot of house shows together, and it was like a 50-50. I won half and he won half. Um, but he was always willing to do anything I wanted to do. And I threw him all over the place, man. I slung him around. He was a lot smaller then, and I was a big power wrestler. I came up watching the Road Warriors, so I would press slam guys and throw them. And Triple H took it like a man. He never complained, so I got to give him that. He was always willing to try anything. So that's the short list of my favorite guys that I've wrestled.
Is there anyone that you wish you would have gotten a chance to work with?
I mean, I wish I would have gotten a chance to wrestle with a lot of the top guys like Undertaker, Bret Hart, and Shawn Michaels. The problem is they were all baby faces when I was there, pretty much. Shawn was a heel for a while, but and they just didn't do babyface versus babyface match in those days. But yeah, any of those top guys, man, I would have loved to have worked with. I would have loved to have worked with Yokozuna, man. I mean, he was amazing in the ring.
He probably would have hit you with a knee in the nose.
No, you see, he wouldn't have been so careless. Rodney could work. Rodney could work. Bundy couldn't work.
Probably one of the best moving big men ever, I would have to say, Yokozuna. I mean,
Yeah. Yeah,
he
those
moves
Samoans,
so
man, those
well.
island boys, they can work and they can move and they're strong, and you better not mess with them because they will shoot on you.
Nice, nice.
I love
I just have one thing, man, just an honorable thing that I want to tell you because I think it's cool. You mentioned your drug addiction and your alcohol addiction and stuff like that, and
Sure.
congratulations on sobriety and all that stuff. I want to tell you that first of all. But I work in a group foster care home with kids that
Nice.
have homeless or moms that you're taking away from moms and dads and stuff like that. And I read that you have your podcast, A Road to Recovery, and man, the way you helping other people, me sitting in this room, this little box here, talking to you, it's honorable to me because you don't meet many people that go through stuff and then in the end you're helping the people, and that's to me, I say thank you for that because
Thank you very
that is
much.
awesome, man. I mean, I
I
got
appreciate that.
my nephew standing right behind him, and they need to know there's people out there that are that went through the stuff that you went through that are now helping other people. So I thank you for that.
Well, I appreciate you saying that. The actual podcast that Road to Recovery, I'm not doing anymore, but I still do a podcast where I talk about recovery. It's part of my kind of trash cam live that I do on Facebook, and I'm also working on another just recovery based podcast as well. So it'll be just like Road to Recovery. But man, I appreciate you saying that. You know, it's been a long, crazy road. Life, in general, has a way sometimes of humbling us. And when we become humble, uh, if we can find our way out of it, we can become grateful. And I'm grateful for every day I have on this earth now, clean and sober. As a matter of fact, coming up next month, October the 2nd, I will have 9 years clean, man. So I take a lot of pride in that.
Can I
That's
use
And
awesome.
can I
yeah,
use what
I
you just
also really take pride in the fact that I get to try and help other people through the court system. And also, I go to the schools, the middle schools and the high school here locally where I live, and I talk to the kids. You know, it's kind of like the DARE program, but a little bit different. But I share my story with them, and I go with the sheriff's department and the district attorneys, and they tell their stories, and we all just kind of try to reach the kids at an early age, and hope that something we say sticks with them. So when that opportunity arises later in life where somebody maybe offers them to do drugs or get messed up or drink alcohol, they say, no, I'm not going to do that because that works against my hopes and dreams, and that will take me down a path I don't want to go. And that's our ultimate goal, man, is to save people on both ends of the spectrum, early when they're kids and later on after they've already fell into it a bit. We try to pull them back out because I found my way out. So now I know the way. So I'm just trying to light the way for others now. So that's kind of what I do these days.
if you don't mind me using, I love what you said. When you became humble, you became grateful.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
talk to
No,
my kids all the time, and so if you don't mind me using that statement, I'd love to.
anytime.
All right,
Yeah.
thank you.
When life truly humbles you, then and only then can you figure out and become grateful for the things you actually have in this world. I had a lot of regrets when I left the wrestling business, and a lot of the drug use was in part because I had regrets. And when I went to the WWF, I had these great dreams of being rich and famous, and because I was a good wrestler, I was definitely one of the best down in Florida on the indie scene. And when I went up there, I had all these expectations, and when they didn't work out right for me, I went home and I was bitter and I was already using drugs and it got 1,000 times worse. And I was worrying about all the wrong things, being rich and famous and all that crap. I realized, there's so much more important things in life than that
Right.
stuff. And that's when I truly became humble.
Nice.
and I had to surrender to this process. And surrender's a dirty word for people. It's like it signifies weakness, but not to me anymore. It signifies, opening your mind to the reality that I'm not in control of everything around me. And I have to accept the fact that I can't control everything. And that's where you surrender, and that's where you become humble. And then closely behind, that's where the gratitude comes in, man.
That's awesome.
I wake up every day grateful, man. I get to wake up. I'm not sick from drugs. I don't have to go out searching for drugs. I'm not getting in trouble anymore, and all that crap that goes with it. And I take it one day at a time, man. One day at a time. I'm gonna make it through today. I'm not gonna use drugs, and we'll see what happens tomorrow. But for today, I'm good. I'm clean, and I'm happy.
That's deep. That's deep. That's good. Thanks.
And thank you so much for spending that last hour with us.
Sure.
I appreciate it. A
No
lot of
problem,
fun.
man. I really appreciate you guys having me on the show, man. I've been looking forward to this, man. I watch all your TikToks and stuff, man. So yeah, I'm right there with you.
You're a good guy, man. I appreciate you coming on here, taking the time. So, you give him the sun off, Andrew.
I'm gonna.
Yeah.
Oh, you didn't know?
Oh, you didn't know? Your ass better call somebody.
Huge Pop Wrestling Podcast. Well, thank you guys for having for being on here. Thanks, Matt, for getting this organized. Thanks, Andrew, for popping in. We're Huge Pop Wrestling Podcast. Their coupon code for Huge Pop for the wrestling boxes here, 15% off your next box. Check out our merch below the screen. Thanks, you. Yeah, you don't need to shave. You're good, man. We have
if you follow me on TikTok, I will still be giving this thing away. We might have to wait a week.
Stone Cold.
Because TikTok doesn't know what.
Just got to do it on the down low, bro.
Yeah, I'll have to do a video and just give it away to whoever. There are 20 people, I think, that signed up for it. So,
right on.
Huge Pop Wrestling Podcast. Check you out next week. Thanks again, dude, to Dr. Droese. Thanks, Matt.
We'll see you Tuesday.
See you Tuesday. Thanks, guys. Peace out. Thanks, Duke. Appreciate you being here, man.
No problem, man. Thank you, guys.
Thanks for sharing that story too. It was amazing. I will use that definitely for my kiddos, and I'm so blessed to meet you, man. I appreciate you.
I feel the same, man. Thanks a lot.
Yep. See you later, man.